Chancellor, it is my honor to present to you Professor Terry Hollands, Distinguished Professor Emeritus in the Department of Mechanical and Mechatronics Engineering at the University of Waterloo. Few Canadians have contributed more to the art and science of solar energy than Dr. Hollands. A pioneer in his field, Dr. Hollands has both refined the technology surrounding solar energy and advocated its feasibility and adoption both in Canada and abroad. After obtaining degrees in engineering physics and chemical engineering from the University of Toronto and McGill, Dr. Hollands began his career working for the Australian government in thermal energy research during the 1960s. From 1969 to 2001, he inspired a generation of students as a professor at the University of Waterloo. He excelled in training graduate students. Many of his students went on to make important contributions to solar energy utilization and energy efficiency. His lasting influence is felt among students today thanks to his efforts to transform the university curriculum to include sustainability, energy efficiency, energy security, greenhouse gases, and numerous other environmental issues, as well as instilling his students important values and ethics. Dr. Hollands' scholarly work has been prolific. He has authored or co-authored 120 journal articles, about 100 articles in conference proceedings, and several books. He also served as the editor-in-chief of the influential international journal Solar Energy. Dr. Hollands' research has had a direct and practical impact on Canadian industry and the design of solar products. Among his innovations, Dr. Hollands pioneered new technologies for windows that help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. They have been widely adopted by the building industry. He led the way in solar energy in its early days when it was not fashionable to do so. So he was a leader. He trained his students not just in solar energy, but its socioeconomic implications and its transformative nature. Dr. Hollands served as chair of the board of directors of the NSERC Solar Buildings Research Network, based at Concordia, and he's currently chair of the board of the NSERC Smart Net Zero Energy Buildings Strategic Research Network, also based at Concordia, which I have the pleasure to lead. Headquartered at Concordia, the network is a pan-Canadian, multi-university, and multidisciplinary group that specializes in smart building research, combining solar energy with energy efficiency and designing the buildings of the future. So this network really is part of inventing the future, as our Chancellor just said. It has several world-class innovations, such as the Building Integrated Solar System at Concordia's John Molson School of Business building. Terry Hollands is a fellow of both the American and Canadian Societies of Mechanical Engineering, and he received numerous accolades during his career. His many awards include the Week's Achievement Through Action Award, the Special Service Award of the International Solar Energy Society, and the Chandrasekhar Lifetime Service Award of the Solar Energy Society of Canada that he helped found. Mr. Chancellor, on behalf of the Senate and the Board of Governors, it is my great privilege and honor to present to you Terry Hollands so that you may confer upon him the degree of Doctor of Science honoris causa.
I would like to introduce Dr. Terry Hollands, who will now provide us with his convocation address.
Mr. Chancellor, Mr. Chairman of the Board of Governors, Mr. President, Vice Chancellor, platform guests, graduating class, friends, and families. Thank you, Concordia, for this degree. I feel, and indeed am, deeply honored. As well as being a personal honor, I look at it as a recognition of solar energy's importance. Despite its potential role in solving some of man's great problems, such as climate change, the importance of solar energy has not always been recognized. Thank you, Concordia, not only on my behalf, but also on the behalf of fellow workers in solar energy in Canada and around the world. To the graduating class, my heartiest congratulations. You are living a milestone, an important milestone in your life's journey. You found the strength, discipline, commitment, and sheer hard work to accomplish what you now celebrate. If it were not for you and others like you, Concordia University would not exist, and the people of Concordia honor that sentiment. That is why we are here today, to honor you. Graduates, as you embark upon your respective careers, I thought about some pleasant things in my own career and how they could possibly benefit you. Indeed, there are many pleasurable moments, but in the interest of time, I will tell you of only a set that I think is most relevant to you. This is the set of exact times or when I hit upon a new idea, particularly an idea that turned out to be useful and creative. I choose the word epiphany, a nice Greek word, to describe this phenomenon. Other words, like the eureka moment or the aha moment, would do as well, but I choose to use that word. Much has been written on epiphanies and on the creative process in general. I discovered this in mid-career when I encountered a book called The Courage to Create by Rollo May. Now, Rollo May was an important American psychologist and philosopher of the latter part of the last century. In this book, he relates the pleasure of the epiphany to that of the aesthetic experience that we encounter on viewing a work of art. It echoes the epiphany that the artist had when creating that art. Rollo May argues that the experience that scientists and mathematicians and engineers have at their creative moments is of the same kind as the artistic one. Thus the pleasure that we experience. Many scientists have documented their epiphanies. In their writings, they note that epiphanies tend to stay with them long after the event. They remember exactly what they were doing at the important moment. Now, how can we cultivate epiphanies so as to increase our pleasure and creativity? Studies have shown that one does best when one is not fully concentrating on the problem at hand, but has it in the back of the mind, that is, in the subconscious. The subconscious has certain advantages over the conscious mind. It's more open to the possibility of a perceived constraint being false, or a seemingly irrelevant fact being in fact relevant. Often it is that type of recognition that is needed in order to produce the epiphany. For example, take the chemist who discovered the benzene ring. He initially was making the false but perfectly understandable assumption at the time that benzene molecule lies all on a straight line. In a moment of relaxation, the subconscious gave him a vision of a snake biting its tail. This led to the epiphany of the molecule having the form of a loop, or a ring, which of course it is. Clearly, the subconscious mind works in funny ways. Thus, epiphanies come not when we are sitting at the desk or at our computer, but rather when we are engaged in a relaxing activity. Walking, it would appear, provides an ideal setting for the epiphany. As recent research shows, the act of putting one foot in front of the other prevents our full concentration. Just think how you have to stop walking if you want to really concentrate. Now here I want to tell you a little story. We should think of the physicist who is working on the creation of quantum mechanics, a theory that revolutionized the whole of physics. And a lot of it occurred in Göttingen, Germany in the 1920s. Someone found the physicist on a campus path, having been locked in a crouched position for some time. When the person offered to help him, he was rebuked. "Don't move me," he said. "I am thinking." So you can't think in the way that you have an epiphany when you're really thinking as that man was. It's likely he was going to have a creative idea, but he may be thinking about the epiphany that he just had, and he wants to analyze it. But at any rate, there have been some recent laboratory-type tests that have shown, indeed, that people are more creative when they are walking. So walking is one way to produce epiphanies, and I urge you to engage in it if you want to be creative. Indeed, many famous scientists, such as Charles Darwin, regularly engaged in walking. There are other parts of the creative process, that is, other than the epiphanies. Unfortunately, they involve work, sometimes hard work. You must first prepare for the event by immersing yourself in it through reading, thinking, discussions, etc. This creates the background for the necessary struggle. Second, after the epiphany, you must commit yourself to it, to bring it to reality. Think of Watt's invention of the steam engine. This commitment can require courage. Thus the title of May's book, The Courage to Create. What interested me most in reading May's book was that commitment must go on, even in times of doubt. May cites an oft-quoted line from James Joyce. He says, "I go to forge in the smithy of my soul the uncreated conscience of my species." Well, that sounds pretty scary. Yes, it is intimidating. Why then be creative? It now seems to be very difficult. What with all that struggling and commitment? Well, there are rewards. In fact, many rewards, not only for you, but also for your country. To paraphrase some economist, creativity leads to innovation. Innovation leads to productivity. Productivity leads to prosperity. The latter, of course, is what we all want. These outcomes are especially true when the creativity arises in the minds of applied scientists and mathematicians. That is, people like you, because you have been given the prerequisite background knowledge and skills that can make creativity work. And as for the hard work, just think of how you had to struggle and commit to get the degree you're receiving today. On Monday, just this last Monday, our Governor General, David Johnson, recognized the link between innovation and prosperity. He announced a new type of award under his own auspices. Perhaps you, in the future, will be one of those who receive a Governor General's Award for Innovation. There is one thing that each of you will definitely create, and that is your career. You will create your careers. Do epiphanies arise in the creation of a career? It depends. I'd like you now to give you an example of one of my own career by telling you a story. It was 1961, and I just met an American in Australia. His name was Robert Dunkel, and he had been a professor at Berkeley. We'd both recently arrived in Australia. Him to research in solar energy in the Australian National Labs, me to discover the country of my recent bride. I soon landed a job there, and it was to work under Robert at the government labs. Before going further, I need to tell you a few things about the times. In 1969, what we call the environment was not a concern. In fact, the word itself carried none of the meaning it has today. Now, the governments of almost all Western countries, including Canada, have departments of the environment. It's hard to imagine how it was then. People had other pressing concerns, chief among them being the Cold War. Indeed, defense was the main emphasis of all research and development at that time. Embedded as I was in the same time frame and lacking a feeling of commitment to any particular field of engineering, I had, in fact, abandoned engineering. That is, after finishing my engineering physics degree in 1959, I'd entered a different profession. But in Australia, I was tentatively returning to engineering, hoping it would work for me now. So now, shortly after arriving in Robert's research group, I noticed a graph on his bulletin board. Pencil drawn on red graph paper, it showed the world's population versus time. I casually asked him about it. A quiet man, not given to pontificating, he responded by describing the as yet unnamed theory of limits to growth. That the Earth is finite, but our current path of exponentially growing populations, exploitations, and abuse of our atmosphere cannot be sustained. Now this was research that I could commit to. Moving Earth to sustainability, I was hooked. I now realize why that graph is etched on my mind. I was having an epiphany. Little things like the color of a graph stay in your mind at an epiphany. The creative struggle had been to find my career focus. Now I had it. It was solar energy. I had only to commit. I hope I did that in the years that followed. Well, to summarize, creativity has three stages: the struggling stage, the epiphany, and the commitment stage. We get the most pleasure at the epiphany, but the overall process gives many rewards, not only for us, but for our country. And we can apply it in many areas, including in developing our own careers. I hope it plays an important part in your career too. Graduates, I wish you to have a wonderful career filled with motivation, commitment, creativity, pleasure-giving epiphany. It is yours to create. Thank you.
Dr. Hollands, I want to thank you for your remarks, and I think the epiphany for today was listening to you. Thank you so much.